I, 26M, met Sarah, 26F, at my friend Mike's, 27M, birthday party 3 years ago. Mike's girlfriend Ashley, 26F, had invited Sarah since they worked together at the time. I wasn't planning to go to the party that night because I had a big project deadline coming up at work, but Mike insisted, saying I was working too much and needed to socialize. I'm glad he did because that's how I met the love of my life. Sarah and I clicked instantly. We spent the whole night talking about everything from our shared love of true crime documentaries to our similar experiences growing up as only children. She had just moved to Seattle from Boston for her new job in marketing, and I offered to show her around the city. One coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into weekend trips exploring Washington state, and before we knew it, we were inseparable. 6 months into our relationship, my lease was ending, and Sarah was struggling with her roommate situation. Her roommate Kate, 25F, had started dating this guy who practically lived at their apartment without contributing to rent or utilities. Sarah was uncomfortable with the situation, especially since the guy would often walk around in his underwear even when Sarah was home. When I suggested moving in together, it just made sense. We found a nice apartment in downtown Seattle, close to both our workplaces. The rent was a bit high, but we managed by splitting everything equally. Sarah's parents Thomas, 52 meters, and Linda, 50F, weren't too happy about us moving in together so soon, but they came around when they met me and saw how happy Sarah was. The problem started about 2 months after we moved in. Sarah works as a marketing executive at a large tech company, and her position often requires her to stay late for client meetings or project deadlines. The first incident happened when she was walking home from the bus stop around 8 p.m. A guy started following her, making explicit comments about her appearance. She called me immediately, and I ran down to meet her, but the guy had already disappeared. After that, similar incidents started happening more frequently. Sometimes it was just catcalling, but other times men would follow her for blocks, trying to get her number or asking where she lived. We filed several police reports, but they always said the same thing: without evidence of a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. Sarah's sister Emma, 24F, suggested she change her route home or take Ubers instead of the bus, but that wasn't financially feasible with Seattle's ride-share prices. Plus, why should Sarah have to change her entire routine because some men can't behave decently? She's worked hard to get where she is in her career, and I hate seeing her have to make compromises because of these creeps. I started picking her up whenever she had to work late, but last week I had to attend a mandatory work conference in Portland. Sarah insisted she would be fine taking the bus since it was still light out when she left work. I was hesitant but didn't want to be overprotective. That's something we've discussed before, finding the balance between keeping her safe and not controlling her life. Around 7 p.m., I was in the middle of a presentation when my phone started buzzing. I stepped out to take the call and heard Sarah crying hysterically. A drunk man had started following her from the bus stop, screaming incoherently about Trump and threatening to kill himself. He followed her all the way to our apartment building, getting more aggressive with each step. When Sarah tried to close the lobby door, he stuck his foot in to prevent it from closing. She managed to squeeze through and run to our apartment, but she could hear him screaming and banging on the lobby door. Sarah called 911, but they said it would be at least 20 minutes before a patrol car could arrive. She was trapped in our apartment, terrified that the man might somehow get into the building. She could hear him outside, alternating between screaming threats and crying about how women always reject him. She called her sister Emma, who lives about 15 minutes away. Emma came over with her boyfriend Mark, 27 meters, but by then the man had disappeared. The police finally arrived almost an hour after Sarah's initial call, did a quick drive around the block, and said they couldn't do anything since the man was gone. I left the conference immediately and drove back to Seattle, breaking several speed limits on the way. When I got home, Sarah was still shaking. Emma told me the guy had come back twice while they were there. The first time, Mark confronted him, and he ran away. The second time, they called the police again, but once again, he was gone before they arrived. Now Sarah is completely traumatized. She's taken a week off work because she can't handle the thought of taking the bus or walking anywhere alone. Her boss James, 45 meters, has been understanding and allowed her to work from home, but he mentioned this can't be a permanent arrangement as her role requires some face-to-face client interaction. I've looked into different solutions, but nothing seems feasible right now. Moving to a safer neighborhood would mean breaking our lease and losing our security deposit, plus we'd have to pay for moving expenses. We spent a lot of money renovating this place, new appliances, fresh paint, and custom shelving that we can't take with us. Sarah's parents offered to help financially, but they already helped us with a car down payment last year, and I don't want to take advantage of their generosity. I've installed security cameras, added extra locks to our doors and windows, and even got motion sensor lights for our balcony. But Sarah still doesn't feel safe. She has nightmares about being chased and wakes up crying multiple times a night. She's started checking our apartment obsessively before going to bed, making sure every window is locked 3 or 4 times. I've adjusted my work schedule to be available to drive her places, but my boss Kevin, 38 meters, is getting frustrated. He's made several comments about me needing to sort out my personal life and focus on work. I'm worried about my job security, but I'm more worried about Sarah's safety and mental health. My friend Jake, 28 meters, suggested getting her a gun for protection, but that's not an option. Sarah lost her cousin to gun violence 5 years ago and hasn't been able to be around firearms since then. I've ordered pepper spray and a personal alarm, but after seeing how aggressive that drunk man was, I'm not confident these would be enough to stop someone who's really determined to hurt her. I feel completely useless. The police won't help, moving isn't immediately possible, and I can't be with her 24/7. How do I help her feel safe again? What can I do to protect her better? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1 First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your suggestions about security systems and self-defense classes were helpful, even though we haven't been able to implement most of them yet. The past 2 weeks have been absolute hell, and things have gotten much worse than I could have imagined. After a week of working from home, Sarah started feeling guilty about putting so much pressure on her team. Her company had several important client presentations coming up, and her boss James, while initially understanding, started making comments about team dynamics suffering from remote work. We spent hours discussing whether she should go back to the office. I offered to drop her off and pick her up every day, rearranging my work schedule to make it possible. My boss Kevin wasn't happy, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. Last Friday, Sarah decided to try going back to work. The week had been relatively quiet, and she felt a bit more confident with all the new security measures we'd installed. I dropped her off at 8 a.m., and we agreed I would pick her up at 6 p.m. sharp. She texted me throughout the day, letting me know she was okay, and things seemed to be going fine. Around 5:30 p.m., I received a text from Sarah that made my blood run cold. She said there was a guy in the coffee shop across from her office who had been watching her all day. She first noticed him during her lunch break when she went to get coffee with her coworker Jenny, 28F. He was sitting by the window, staring directly at her. When she went back to the office, she could see him still sitting there, occasionally looking up at her building. Sarah decided to leave early and asked if I could come get her right away. I was in the middle of a meeting but left immediately, telling my boss it was an emergency. The drive to her office usually takes about 20 minutes, but there was heavy traffic due to an accident on the main road. I tried calling Sarah to tell her I'd be a little late, but her phone went straight to voicemail. When I finally reached her office building 30 minutes later, Sarah wasn't in the parking lot. I ran up to her office, but it was empty. Her bag was still at her desk, and her computer was still on. Jenny told me Sarah had left about 15 minutes ago, saying she was going to wait in the coffee shop since I was running late. I felt my heart stop. I ran across the street to the coffee shop, but Sarah wasn't there. The guy she had mentioned wasn't there either. The barista remembered Sarah coming in looking scared, but said she had run to the bathroom and hadn't come out. When I knocked on the bathroom door, I heard crying. Sarah had locked herself in the bathroom. The guy had followed her when she left the office. He tried to grab her arm in the parking lot, saying he just wanted to talk. Sarah managed to break free and run into the coffee shop. Her phone had died, which is why she couldn't call for help. She had been trapped in that bathroom for 45 minutes, terrified that the guy was still outside waiting for her. The coffee shop staff had called the police when they noticed something was wrong, and this time they actually caught the guy. He was still lurking around the building when the police arrived. That's when everything got even more complicated. The guy turned out to be David, 29 meters, Mark's cousin. Yes, the same Mark who is dating Sarah's sister Emma. Apparently, David had seen Sarah's pictures on Mark's social media, photos from family gatherings, dinners, and the holiday party we had all attended last Christmas. He had become obsessed with her, following Mark's and Emma's social media accounts to track Sarah's locations and routine. Emma broke down when she found out. She had been regularly posting pictures of her sister dates with Sarah, including the cafes they visited and the shops they liked. She even posted about Sarah returning to work that day, excited that things were getting back to normal. She never thought someone would use this information to stalk her sister. Mark is devastated too. He had no idea his cousin was capable of something like this. Apparently, David had been asking casual questions about Sarah for months, but Mark thought he was just being friendly and taking an interest in his girlfriend's family. Mark immediately cut all ties with David and is cooperating fully with the police, providing them with all the messages David had sent him asking about Sarah. The police have charged David with stalking and attempted assault, but he was released on bail 2 days later. His parents posted the bail, claiming their son has mental health issues and needs help, not jail. We've filed for a restraining order, but the hearing isn't for another month. The legal system moves painfully slow when you're living in fear. The situation has caused a huge rift in Sarah's family. Emma is destroyed by guilt, constantly apologizing and crying about how she never should have posted so much on social media. But their parents are defending Emma, saying she couldn't have known David would do something like this. They're pressuring Sarah to forgive her sister, saying family needs to stick together during difficult times. Sarah has completely shut down. She's angry at Emma for unconsciously helping her stalker, angry at her parents for defending Emma, angry at Mark for bringing David into their lives, and angry at me for not getting to her faster. She's barely eating or sleeping. When she does sleep, she has nightmares about what could have happened if she hadn't made it to the coffee shop in time. I suggested talking to a victim advocate that the police recommended, but Sarah refuses. She says she's tired of telling her story to people who can't actually help her. The only person she still talks to is Jenny, who has been bringing her work files and checking on her daily. Jenny even offered to be a witness for the restraining order hearing, as she had noticed David watching The Office several times before but hadn't realized he was targeting Sarah specifically. Our relationship is struggling. Sarah doesn't feel safe anywhere or with anyone anymore. She flinches when I try to hold her, and she started sleeping in the guest room because she says she needs space. I'm trying to be patient and understanding, but it kills me to see her suffering like this. I don't know how to help her anymore. Everything I do seems to make things worse. Has anyone dealt with something similar? How do you help someone rebuild their sense of safety when it's been completely shattered? How do you hold a relationship together when trust in everyone and everything has been broken? Update 2. I really wish I was writing this update with better news, but everything has gotten so much worse in ways I never could have imagined. The past month has been like living in a nightmare that keeps revealing new, darker layers. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for last week. Sarah had been preparing for it with help from Jenny, who had been documenting every time she noticed David watching The Office. Jenny even helped Sarah organize a timeline of events and gathered statements from other coworkers who had seen David lurking around. 2 days before the hearing, Sarah received an anonymous email with screenshots of text messages. At first, she thought they were from another one of David's victims trying to help. But as she read through them, she realized they were conversations between David and Jenny. Yes, the same Jenny who had been supporting Sarah through all of this. The texts went back months. Jenny and David had dated briefly last year after meeting at a company event. She broke it off because David wasn't ambitious enough for her, but she never got over him. When she saw him watching Sarah from the coffee shop that first day, she didn't warn Sarah. Instead, she texted David, asking why he was there. That's when their sick collaboration started. Jenny began feeding David information about Sarah's schedule, which entrance she used, when she took lunch breaks, and which days she stayed late. She even told him about our plans to move next month, including the address of the new apartment we were considering. The most disturbing messages were from the day of the incident at the coffee shop. Jenny had texted David that Sarah was leaving early, suggesting he accidentally run into her in the parking lot. She thought if she helped orchestrate enough chance encounters, David would realize Sarah wasn't interested and come back to her. At least, that's what she claimed when the police questioned her. We took the messages to the police immediately. They brought Jenny in for questioning, and she broke down pretty quickly. She admitted to everything but kept insisting she never thought David would hurt Sarah. The text messages proved otherwise. There were multiple conversations where David talked about making Sarah pay attention to him and Jenny encouraged him, saying things like maybe she'll finally notice you if you make a bigger gesture. The company fired Jenny as soon as they found out. They're also conducting an internal investigation because Jenny had used her position to access Sarah's calendar and private information. Our lawyer says this actually strengthens the case against David, as it proves premeditation and organized stalking. But here's where it gets even more complicated. During Jenny's questioning, it came out that Emma knew about Jenny and David's previous relationship. She had met Jenny at a company holiday party last year when Jenny was still dating David. Emma claims she forgot about it until now because it was such a brief interaction, but Sarah doesn't believe her. Sarah has completely cut off contact with Emma and their parents. She says she can't trust anyone anymore. Her parents keep trying to mediate, saying Emma genuinely forgot and is devastated about everything. They've been calling me constantly, asking me to help convince Sarah to talk to Emma, but I've stopped answering their calls. Sarah needs space to process this betrayal, and I'm going to respect that. Mark has been trying to make things right by helping our lawyer build a case against David. He's provided years of messages and emails showing David's increasing obsession with Sarah. But Sarah doesn't want his help. She says everyone connected to David is dead to her now. We've had to completely scrap our plans for moving since Jenny knew about them. The property manager was understanding when we explained the situation and agreed to let us break the lease without penalty. We're looking at places in completely different neighborhoods now, and we're not telling anyone the address except our employers. Sarah has quit her job. She couldn't handle going back to that office knowing Jenny had been watching her and reporting her movements to David all those months. Her boss James tried to convince her to stay, offering to move her to a different department or let her work remotely permanently, but Sarah says the company will always remind her of this nightmare. I don't know what's going to happen now. The legal proceedings are ongoing. Both David and Jenny are facing stalking charges, and Jenny is also being charged with conspiracy and misuse of private information. Our lawyer says the case is strong, especially with the text messages as evidence, but court dates keep getting delayed because David's family hired some hotshot defense attorney who keeps filing motions. The only silver lining, if you can call it that, is that Sarah has started sleeping in our bedroom again. She says I'm the only person she trusts now. I just hope that trust is enough to help us get through this and rebuild our lives. Update 3. This will probably be my final update. I'm writing this from our new apartment in Portland, where we moved 3 weeks ago. A lot has happened since my last post, and I want to provide closure to everyone who has been following our story and offering support. The legal proceedings against David and Jenny are still ongoing, but there have been some developments. Jenny accepted a plea deal and agreed to testify against David. She's facing 18 months of probation and mandatory counseling. David's family is still fighting the charges, claiming he has mental health issues and needs treatment, not punishment. The trial is set for next month, but our lawyer says it could take up to a year for everything to be resolved. The decision to move to Portland wasn't easy. I had to give up my position at my company, but they had an opening in their Portland office, so I was able to transfer. The pay is slightly less, but the cost of living here is more manageable. Sarah found a new job with a marketing firm that allows her to work remotely. Her new boss actually went through something similar years ago and has been incredibly understanding about Sarah's situation. Emma made one last attempt to reconcile before we left Seattle. She sent a lengthy email explaining that she genuinely hadn't connected the dots about Jenny and David's relationship until it was too late. She included screenshots of her social media from that time period, showing that she had only briefly mentioned meeting Jenny at the holiday party. Sarah read the email but didn't respond. She says maybe someday she'll be ready to talk to Emma again, but right now, any reminder of what happened sends her into a panic attack. Sarah's parents also tried to visit before we left. They showed up at our old apartment unannounced, saying they couldn't let their daughter leave without trying to fix things. Sarah refused to see them. She asked me to tell them that she needs time to heal without anyone trying to force reconciliation or minimize what happened. They left a letter that Sarah hasn't opened yet. She's keeping it, but says she's not ready to read it. We've completely changed how we live now. We don't post anything on social media. Our new address is known only to our employers and a handful of trusted friends who never had any connection to David or Jenny. We chose an apartment complex with 24-hour security and multiple surveillance cameras. The building also has a secure parking garage, so Sarah never has to walk outside alone at night. The nightmares haven't completely stopped, but they're less frequent. Sarah started doing online therapy sessions last week. She says talking to someone who's physically far away makes her feel safer. She's also joined an online support group for stalking survivors, which seems to be helping her process everything. I know some people might think we're running away from our problems. Sarah's parents certainly do. They've been telling mutual friends that we're overreacting and that moving away will only make it harder to heal family relationships. But I've seen Sarah smile more in the past week than she did in the last 3 months in Seattle. Sometimes running away is actually running towards something better. We're slowly building a new life here. We've met some neighbors who invited us to their game night, and Sarah is considering going. It would be her first social event since everything happened. She's nervous but says she wants to try. That's progress. I don't know what the future holds, especially with the ongoing legal battle. But for now, we're focusing on creating a safe, peaceful life in our new home. Sarah is finally sleeping through the night again, and honestly, that's all the validation I need that we made the right choice. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and support throughout this ordeal. Your messages helped us feel less alone during the darkest times.